In the 44th verse of the 24th chapter of Luke's Gospel, the risen Jesus is with his disciples, and he tells them everything must be fulfilled that is written about me in the law of Moses, the prophets, and the Psalms. And then he opened their minds so they could understand the scriptures. In this video series, I've been trying to look at what is written in the law of Moses, the prophets, and the Psalms, and to show just how Jesus is the one to whom all the stories point, even if his name is never mentioned once in the Old Testament. And today I want to look at the book of Isaiah. Isaiah was a prophet who lived many centuries before Jesus, and he spoke God's words to the people of Judah in southern Israel. He was warning them about the judgment that was coming if they wouldn't stop trusting in a foreign nation known as Assyria instead of trusting in God. Isaiah warns them that due to their sins, they're going to end up in exile. But he also tells them that there's a Messiah figure who will come and rescue them. You can imagine that the Israelites would have expected a conquering hero to come and rescue them from slavery. But in the midst of Isaiah's prophecies, in chapter 53, comes this description of the Messiah figure. It's a long passage, but it's very important, so I want to read this. He grew up before him like a tender shoot and like a root out of dry ground. He had no beauty or majesty to attract us to him, nothing in his appearance that we should desire him. He was despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows and familiar with sufferings. Like one from whom men hide their faces, he was despised, and we esteemed him not. Surely he took up our infirmities and carried our sorrows, yet we considered him stricken by God, smitten by him, and afflicted. But he was pierced for our transgressions, he was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was upon him, and by his wounds we are healed. We all, like sheep, have gone astray. Each of us has turned to his own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. He was oppressed and afflicted, yet he did not open his mouth. He was led like a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before her shearers is silent, so he did not open his mouth. By oppression and judgment he was taken away. And who can speak of his descendants? For he was cut off from the land of the living. For the transgression of my people he was stricken. He was assigned a grave with the wicked and with the rich in his death, though he had done no violence, nor was any deceit in his mouth. Yet it was the Lord's will to crush him and cause him to suffer. And though the Lord makes his life a guilt offering, he will see his offspring and prolong his days, and the will of the Lord will prosper in his hand. After the suffering of his soul, he will see the light of life and be satisfied. By his knowledge, my righteous servant will justify many, and he will bear their iniquities. Therefore I will give him a portion among the great, and he will divide the spoils with the strong, because he poured out his life unto death, and was numbered with the transgressors. For he bore the sins of many, and made intercession for the transgressors. Amazing, isn't it? Hundreds of years before Jesus' death comes these stirring words about a Messiah, a conquering hero who will be a servant, who will die a violent death in the place of the people for their sins, and he will do this voluntarily, picking up their infirmities and putting them on his back. And just in case there was any doubt about who this is, we have the story of an Ethiopian eunuch in Acts chapter 8, verses 26 to 39. He's reading this very passage from Isaiah as he's traveling home from Jerusalem, and God sends Philip, one of the apostles, to meet him. And in Acts chapter 8, verses 34 to 35, we read this. The eunuch asked Philip, "Tell me, please, who is this prophet talking about, himself or someone else?" And then Philip began with that very passage of Scripture and told him the good news about Jesus. This servant who will be led like a lamb to the slaughter, even though he had done nothing wrong. This man of sorrows who was pierced for our transgressions. This Messiah figure who would die as a guilt offering and then rise again to see the light of life. This is Jesus. And that is what Isaiah chapter 53 is all about.